All right. Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nedarim, Daf Mem Gimel, starting at the bottom of Mem Beis Mem Beis, 3 lines from the bottom at a new mission. All part of the same theme, the parak of Ein Bein Mudar, and the Mishnah writes as follows: Hamudar hana mechavero. If I am madir hana from you, lo yashilenu v'lo yishal mimenu. I can't lend things to you, and I also can't borrow things from you. Lo yilonu v'lo yilava mimenu. And not money, and not with not money in either direction, lending or handing out, lending or borrowing. Below yimkor, I also can't sell things to. Below yikach mimenu. Now, there's already a question that should pop off the page. Is this a one-directional neder? And if it's one-directional, why should lending be a problem if I'm the Baal Hana? Like, who cares? And there's no Hana for me in lending. I'm losing an object. So that Gemara is going to deal with that. And says the Gemara at the very top of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph, Bishlama lo yilonu dekame hanile. I could understand how when a person takes a loan that there's a benefit. Ela lo yilava hemanu. Why not? My kama hanile. If I'm the lender, then who cares? Why? I don't gain anything. And maybe we can even take it a step further. Ubishlama lo yilava. Even in that case, maybe we can say that I'll lend you money and still there's going to be a benefit. There are case scenarios that even when I lend something to you, I'm the one who's the beneficiary in a way. And the Rishonim write the example of, let's say I give you coins, and the coins that you return to me, even though they're the same denomination, but if they're in more of a mint condition, then their street value is a little bit better. I don't want your penny from 1963. I want your penny from 2022. Fine. So the Gemara here says that maybe I could even understand why there's a hana there. But here's the part that the Gemara says that I don't understand in the Mishnah. Ella, 4 lines down. Lo yishal heimenu, my kamis hanile. But when there's a she'ela, when you're borrowing something, then you have to give back exactly what you borrowed. So for sure you're not getting, when you say by the coins, I gave you 5 silver coins, you gave me back 5 silver coins, maybe the ones you gave back are better than the ones I gave you, that's a hana. But if I borrow your car, so like there's no hana in giving back your own car, it's your car, and now it has more wear and tear. For sure should not be a hana. So my kamis hanimine, and the Gemara provides 2 answers for this question as to why our Mishnah says that she'ela is not allowed in both directions. Again, we understand the one who's receiving the loan, the lent item, that's allowed, no problem. But why is it that it's usher for me as you're not allowed to benefit from? I'm not allowed to benefit. No, you're not allowed to benefit from me. So therefore, it should work out just fine. The Gemara here concludes with 2 answers. Number 1, Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Kigon shenadru hana zemizeh. Really, our Mishnah is multi-directional. It's numerous isurei hana, me to you and you to me, and that's why our Mishnah explicated both cases in both directions. And Abaye Amar, no, really, it's one directional, but gzeira lishol mishum lahashil. Oh, that's a very interesting removal. You're right. When I lend to you, that's not a hana. But I'm afraid that if I lend to you, then it may go in the other direction as well. The whole Mishnah is like that. There's a gzera d'Rabbanan, even though technically it should work, we don't allow it. That brings us to our next Mishnah. Amar lo hashileni parasa. Can I please borrow your cow? I have a big field. I want your cow to pull the plow so I can begin to set up for the season of planting. Amar lo, and you ask me to borrow my cow, and I say back to you, Amar lo eini pnuya. My cow is currently being rented; it's not available. Amar, you say in frustration, konem sheda. I'm so tired. It's not even a hard word. Thank you.
It is a hard word. It can be read 3 different ways.
Not when you prepared the Daf 4 times today. It's not hard at that point. Thank you. Konem sadi she'ani choresh bala olam. He takes a neder upon himself that he's never going to use this cow to plow. And then magically the rental was canceled and now the cow is available. So says the Gemara as follows, quarter of the way down. Im hayadar kolach rosh. If I, the one who made this neder against your cow, if it's actually me who's going to be moving this animal, then who us? Or only I would be restricted from using this animal. But one of my employees would be allowed to. I was only restricting myself. However, v'im ein dar kolach rosh. If I'm never the one who plows, I'm the boss. I'm not the worker, and it's always going to be somebody else. So obviously, my intention was not about me. It was a more broad comment. Hu v'chol adam asurin, and that's the end of case number of that case in our Mishnah. Here's the next case of our Mishnah. Hamudar hana mechaver ve'en lo ma yochal. This case we've seen in Shas before. We saw this in Maseches Ksubis, that if a person is madir hana mechavero, so Ruvain says to Shimon, you're not allowed to benefit from me. But then ve'en lo ma yochal, then Ruvain, who has money, looks at Shimon, who's destitute, indigent, and he sees that he has no food. So what can Ruvain do to help Shimon? Because Shimon is not allowed to benefit from Ruvain. So Reuven goes to the store, and he says to the store owner, Ish Ploni should be mudar mimeni hana. Shimon's not allowed to get benefit from me. Whatever can I do? And he's speaking in code. We're similar to these kinds of things from Amir La'akum, like, wow, it is so chilly in here. Wink. So the Gemara says over here, that's what Reuven's saying. Shimon has an Isser Hana on me. I have money. He has none. Whatever shall I do? So what does the Chenveni do? The store owner says, so the store owner is allowed to give food directly to Shimon, and he can bill the tab of Reuven. What about the Isser Hana? Shimon can't benefit from it. So this is considered to be indirect. That's part one, is that it's indirect. And part two is that technically speaking, Reuven could put his foot down and say, I never really made you my shliach. I only hinted, and therefore I don't have to pay you back. So because technically speaking, Reuven doesn't have to pay back the store owner in such a case, so therefore it's not considered to be a proper Hana. And similarly, Haya Beso Livnos, Shimon's house fell down, needs to be rebuilt. Gidro Ligdor, his fence broke down, has to be rebuilt. Sadehu Lixor, he needs his field to be plowed. Holechetz alapolim, what can Reuven do? Because Reuven has the money, Shimon has no money. So Holechetz alapolim, he can go over to the workers and say, Ve'omer, Ish Ploni mudar mimeni hana, my friend Shimon, he's not allowed to benefit from me. And ve'eni yodea ma'aseh, whatever shall I do? His fence is broken, his house is broken, his field is overgrown. What should we do? So the workers can do the work. They are conceptually shlichim, even though halachically they're not. They can do the work for Shimon and send the bill to Reuven. Same exact rationale applies as it did in the previous case, because Reuven didn't exactly hire Shimon to be hire the workers to be a shliach. So therefore, technically speaking, Reuven could be a jerk and say, yes, you did the work for Shimon, but I never really asked you to be a shliach, and I'm not paying you back, and therefore that's not considered a hana. Next, this Gemara we also saw in a previous Masechta. Where did we see this? This must have been, anybody know? Well, let's learn the case. No saying the echad l'shumatan. So let's say the three of us are on a trip, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon has an Isser Hana, he's not allowed to benefit from Reuven. So, but Reuven is the one with all the food. So what happened? Sukkah? That was a long time ago. You're not normal. I mean, in a complimentary kind of way. That's not normal.
But I'm saying it's not exactly the same.
Well, let's get to the case.
No star.
What?
It's probably why there's no star. Probably a little bit different. Must be different.
I have a Masoras Hashas here, but it doesn't lead to what Binyamin was pointing out. I have one for the words no say lech. Oh yeah. So let's learn the case. I was foreshadowing a little bit. So they're walking. Reuven and Shimon and Levi are walking together. Shimon's not allowed to benefit from Reuven, but Reuven owns all the food. And so he's allowed no saying le'echad l'shumatana le'echad or la'acher, depending on the girsa. So Reuven can give the food to Levi and say, Levi, do your thing, and then he'll give the food to Shimon, no problem. V'hala mutar ba, and then Shimon can benefit from Levi. That's not a problem. If it's just Reuven and Shimon is not allowed to be neh from Reuven, and Reuven's the only one with the food, Reuven can take the food and put it on a rock or on a fence. This food is completely mufkar, completely hefker. I am completely mafkir this food, and anyone can eat it. And then v'hala no tel v'ochel. However, in this last case, when Reuven and Shimon are alone in the desert, the Rabbi Yossi oser. That's our Mishnah.
So is it only in the last case there?
Yes, it's only in that case. We'll see explicitly in the Gemara that that's the case. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the real Rashi, probably, I'm just guessing, probably would never have done that. Because it's the next words of the Gemara. It's the next words of the Gemara. And even if it was Rashi, he'll say, lahalan, whatever he would have said, lakaman mefarish beGemara, whatever his lashon is. But this was overly explicit. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So the Gemara asks this question on Rabbi Yossi. We understand if you're being mafkir, then why can't Shimon benefit from you? It's not yours anymore if you're mafkir. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, my time of Rabbi Yossi. Why is it that Rabbi Yossi says that when Reuven and Shimon are the only ones around, Reuven has the food, but Shimon has an Isra enough from Reuven, that he's allowed to take the food and put it on a rock, put it on a fence, and then be mafkir it? Why is it that he's osir such a case? It says the Gemara, this is answer number one, which will be rejected. Kasavar, it must be that Rabbi Yossi is of the opinion that hefker is kimatana. That being mafkir something is similar to giving a gift to someone. Okay, what does that mean? Says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom, mamatana, just like a gift, the transaction of giving a gift is not completed until it leaves my rishus and goes into your rishus. This language needs taiching. Does it need both? Does it need to leave my rishus and go into your rishus? Can I be kona in a rishus harabim? Okay, not for now. It's a good question. Or okay, so that's part one. That's by matana. So maybe af hefker ad asil rishus zoche. So here, maybe we would say the same thing. If we say kasavar that hefker is like a matana, and a matana requires a threshold to go over in order for the kinyan to take place of the matana, maybe we'd say the same by hefker. So it's very nice, Ruvain, that you put it on the rock, but it's not mine yet. And if I pick that up now, I'm being nana from you because it's not really hefker yet. So therefore, that's a hana. So that's maybe why the Gemara says Rabbi Yossi is oser, and then asks the Gemara, hold on one second. We have a brisa that is really a perfect corollary to our Mishnah. Masiv Rabbi Abba, I know the following brisa, v'hala notel v'ochel, that in a case similar to our Mishnah, in a case where we have the food sitting on the rock and Shimon wants to take the food, the Tanakama says notel v'ochel, Rabbi Yossi oser. But then this brisa actually gives us more information than our Mishnah does. Our Mishnah ended with Rabbi Yossi oser. We didn't know why. And we thought maybe kasavar that hefker is like matana. Says the Gemara, I have a brisa that tells us exactly what Rabbi Yossi was thinking. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi, Masai. When is it that I would say that it's usher for Shimon to take the food off of the rock when Ruvain's mafkir the food? It's only true that we'd say it's usher if the neder of Shimon that he can't benefit from Ruvain precedes the hefker, the being mafkir. However, as we turn to the top of Mem Gimel Amud Beis, and we're going to go until 3 lines until the bottom of the page, but if the being mafkir was done before the neder, so then Shimon's allowed to benefit. And asks the Gemara on this brisa, which pushes against the shita of Rabbi Abba. I don't understand. The Amris, if in fact it's true, not Rabbi Abba, that wasn't Rabbi Abba's shita, the shita of Rabbi Yochanan. If Rabbi Yochanan is right, that the reason why Rabbi Yossi is oser is because hefker is kematana, then I don't understand. The Amris ad asi the rishus zoche. If what you're saying is that until the hefker gets into the property of Shimon, it's still not hefker yet. Mali nidro kodem lehefkero, mali hefkero kodem lenidro. Who cares about the order of the neder? It doesn't matter. The transaction of being mafkir that item does not work. I don't care where you are. It doesn't matter. If you're in a desert and there's no thresholds of my property and yours, you can't be mafkir something according to this shita. So how then does this brisa fit with the shita Rabbi Yochanan? So Rabbi Abba answers the question. Hu mosiv la v'hu meshani la. He asks the question and he answers it, and says the Gemara, Kol hanoder ein daito al ma shehifkir. When a person makes a neder, he doesn't even think about the things that he was already mafkir. And therefore, in our brisa, when you're mafkir before the neder, it's totally out of your mind. And therefore, it's already like it's mufkar. We need some lamdus and rishonim here to understand exactly what that means, but that's what the Gemara effectively means, and that's how the brisa can still make sense. Says the Gemara, Masiv Rava, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to read this line and it won't make any sense, and then I'll explain how the rishonim explain what's going on here. Miktsas on the rishon v'chul on the sheni. What's the case over here? So I have 2 avadim, and I give miktsas on the rishon, part of my estate, to eved number 1, and then v'chul on the sheni, and then I give everything else that I own to the second person. Now here's a knetch. If I say to my eved, you hereby own everything that I own, by definition you're freeing the slave because you own the slave. So if you're giving the eved everything you own, you're freeing the slave. Okay, with that piece in mind, let's look back at these words again. Miktsas on the rishon, let's say that Chaim is the first eved. You can have a portion of what I've given you. Now in that portion, we're not giving him his own freedom. You can have the following 50 items from my property. No problem. But then when he says v'chul on the sheni, when he says to the second slave, not Chaim, but Yaakov, he says to Yaakov, I hereby give you everything. So says the Gemara, and this language is not the language that we conclude with. The Gemara says, Rishon kana sheni lo kana. That's actually not our girsa. And in fact, look at the Ran. The Ran is on the 4th line of the Ran, outer margin. The girsa is at the end of that line. It's not like we have in our Gemara, Rishon kana sheni lo kana, but rather, sheni zacha li shtabed berishon. The second Eved now owns everything, including the first Eved. Right? So this guy went from being an Eved to being a Baal in a double transaction. Let's repeat the case because it's confusing. I say to Eved number one, to Chaim, you can have 50 out of my 100 pieces of property. Goodbye. But he's still an Eved. But he has some ownership. Then I go over to Yaakov and say, I hereby forego all of my properties. You therefore own everything. The Gemara says that the first Eved is now owned by the second Eved. But that's a problem. Why? Because in the first transaction, I wasn't mafkir the first Eved. All I did was give him the 50 items. So according to the principle of Kol hanoder ein daitu al ma shehifkir, according to the principle that Rabbi Abba laid out, that when a person makes a neder, he's not going to refer to things that he wasn't planning on transacting upon. So then that means that the first Eved should not belong to the second Eved. Why? Because that wasn't the transaction. My only transaction was on those 50 items, which means that I wasn't thinking about Eved number one, which means that when I'm now dialoguing with Eved number two, you can't own that previous thing because Kol hanoder ein daitu al ma shehifkir. You shouldn't be included in the transaction.
The second Eved shouldn't be able to own the first Eved, you're saying?
Yes.
Correct, because the kavana for me of the Baal, it's not because of the Eved. It's because for me as the Baal, when I said you own everything, it wasn't talking about the Eved. It was only talking about the 50 items that I gave that Eved. So this is now a kasha on Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba was under the assumption of Kol hanoder ein daitu al ma shehifkir. But here, what does the Gemara say? That Eved number one does belong to Eved number two, which means that Rabbi Abba is wrong. Sophisticated question. The Gemara, it's a tough question. And the Gemara responds with an old story that we've learned about in another Masechta. Ela amar Rava, you're right. Hainu taima de Rabbi Yossi. Really, fundamentally, you're right. The Gzeira, that really fundamentally, it should work. Why is Rabbi Yossi Oser? Only on a technicality, only out of concern. Gzeira mishum matnas beis choron. Only because of a story that we learned about in Maseches Ksubis. And the story was where a father and son had an Isser Hana, and then the son was getting married. He wanted to invite his father to the wedding, but he couldn't because his father was Mudar Hana from him. So what did he do? So if Yitzchak was the son and Avram was the father, Yitzchak said to his best friend, he said, I'm giving you everything that I spent here. I'm giving everything to you so that my father can come to the wedding. I still want to have my wedding. I'm giving you all of the food and everything, so that you own the food, so that my father can come to the wedding and be nana from the food that you own now. He can't be nana from me. And there was a big deal in there in the Gemara and in Maseches Ksubis, and the Gemara concluded that this is not considered an actual transfer of power, because the transfer of power of all of the food in the wedding to Yitzchak's friend, whoever, Chaim, was only bitnai that it's only for his father. That's a conditional transaction, and it doesn't work. So says the Gemara, that's what Rabbi Yossi was concerned about. Now let's look back in our Mishnah and plug this in. Rabbi Yossi was of the opinion at the bottom of at the Mishnah toward the bottom of Mem Gimel Amud Aleph. What was the case? Ruvain has the food. Shimon has an Isser Hana from Ruvain. What's the Mishnah's suggestion? Take the food from Ruvain. Ruvain is going to put the food on a rock or on a fence, and he's going to be mafkir. What's his language? Anybody who wants it can take it. Rabbi Yossi says no. Why does Rabbi Yossi say no? Because maybe when he's mafkir the food, he's only being mafkir the food so that Shimon can have it. That's not a good transaction. And if it's not a good transaction and Shimon eats that food, he was nehane from Ruvain. That was his concern, and we learned it from the case of Beis Choron. We're going to stop right here, 3 lines from the bottom. We'll pick up tomorrow in Yirtzeh Hashem with a blot and a half on, no, what, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, okay, so then we'll do Mem Daled. We'll finish the parak. 3 short amudim. We'll finish the parak in Yirtzeh Hashem, and then we're back to Shabbos. Wow, we could probably learn 4 blot tomorrow if we really wanted to. This is how we like it. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
I have one question.